Protect your crypto with the ultimate security solution, a hardware wallet. Say goodbye to sleepless nights worrying about hacks or theft. Secure it with a hardware wallet today. IsoShop, your #1 authorized reseller for Philippines.
Seeing the numbers right now, I'm so happy. I think you guys have 1,400 registered participants.
In the blockchain space, there's so much opportunities for people to bring their ideas.
So kung meron kang pera and you want to be wealthy in your lifetime, kailangan mo mag-zero in dun sa mga new technology. Us as traders, no, as forever students of the market, kailangan tayo renegable.
Why are we into Bitcoin? It's because we genuinely believe that humanity needs a better form of money that is not dollars or pesos or any of these things. We want money that we can actually hold on to, and this will be our life savings, and it will maintain its value against the things we want.
All right, and we're live. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Web3 Weekly. This is the third in the row, by the way, and I want to give a massive shout out before we get started to Jonathan, founder of Museigen, Dex in the background, making all the websites, making all the graphics, and Rachel organizing it all, the maestro. So thank you to the three who have made these last 3 weeks super special for me, because we are here again for the third episode of Web3 Weekly in a row. And today we have a very special guest. His name is Timothy, also known as Timothy Asiimwe. He was recently in DevCon, if you were lucky enough to see him in the main stage. But he represents Mercy Corp Ventures. And today we're going to dive into crypto for good, which is a contrarian point of view if you're the mainstream media, or if you're not necessarily familiar with all the aspects of the transformative power of blockchain, right? We're going to discuss his fund, and we're going to discuss how Web3 has matured into these emerging markets that is actually solving real world problems and challenges. So without further ado, welcome Timo to the stage.
Hey Nick, thank you so much for having me. Really glad to be here.
Thank you, sir. I mean, I gotta like really overstate that the context behind this this Web3 Weekly tonight is because Timo and I met on Monday or Sunday, I don't know, like maybe Sunday your time and Monday my time, and we really hit it off. And I realized like halfway through the call, like we can't let this kind of conversation go without an audience, right? Especially an audience new to Web3 or an audience in our emerging markets, right? I live in Bangkok. Timo, where are you calling from? And tell me a little bit about yourself, right? to the rest of the world? Like we know, but like for everyone else.
Absolutely. So I'm dialing in from Kampala, Uganda. That's in East Africa.
Hmm.
I guess a little bit about myself. I work with an organization called Museigen Ventures,
Hmm.
which is the impact investing arm of Museigen, and I lead our crypto venture lab.
Can I ask you what brought you to Bangkok? Because when I connected with you, one of the first things that I saw was that you were on stage at DevCon, correct? Yeah. Did
That's
you do
right.
something with yourself or Mercy Corp Ventures? How did that journey lead you from Uganda to Thailand?
Yeah, that's a good question. So in Bangkok, I was presenting at DevCon, and my talk was centered around our work around crypto.
Hmm.
So Massica Ventures has an initiative called the Crypto for Good Fund, and with the Crypto for Good Fund, we are aiming to close what we call the hype gap in blockchain.
Mm.
There's been lots of hype around the potential for blockchain, but unfortunately, this hype hasn't matched reality in emerging markets. So
Yeah.
we've seen a few use cases that have really worked. For instance, the use of stablecoins for cross-border payments,
Right.
but by and large, many are still asking and wondering, where are the crypto use cases? And
Yeah.
so that was sort of the inspiration behind the Crypto for Good Fund. We offer up to $100,000 to startups and entrepreneurs that are looking to solve real-world problems using the
Right.
blockchain.
Wow.
And at the end of each pilot, we publicly publish all the insights and learnings and findings for the wider Web3 ecosystem. So I guess that's sort of the background behind my trip to Bangkok. The goal was
Mm.
to highlight a few of the successful use cases that we've seen coming out of the crypto fund.
So what if I'm a founder, or if I'm a startup, or if I'm someone with a crazy idea, right?
Yeah.
And I live in an emerging market, or I live outside of one, right? But I work with a remote team who does. How
Yeah.
can I get involved? When is your application closed? Like, what's the window on getting involved with like such a cool thing to create a positive impact like that?
Yeah, so we're currently at the fourth iteration of the Crypto for Good Fund. We've run 3 rounds in the past. So we actually have the call for applications for the Crypto for Good Fund 4 is currently open, and it's running until the 20th of December.
Mm.
We have the application form on our Medium blog. Yeah, if you could, yeah, I believe Nick will share the link to that maybe at the
Dex,
end of
maybe
this.
maybe you can do it. Oops, my throat. Dex, like let's drop the link in the chat and we can put it up there for sure. Can I ask a question? Like, how do you get involved with something like this, right? Not only for the listeners out there, but someone like yourself who's been from maybe a consumer to creator, and now here you are, right? Going to DevCon,
Yep.
Speaking about it. Uh, how do you scale and continue to scale such an initiative like something of this nature?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think in terms of like how people can get involved, so we have a pretty straightforward application form,
Mm.
and we estimate that it takes about 2 hours to complete. So we have a few questions that we ask, that are just text based, but
Yeah.
then we also ask you to prepare a few documents. One is what we call a pilot deck, which is
Sure.
basically a
Sure.
6-slide document just outlining, the pilot that you're looking to test and what you hope
Mhm.
to learn out of that. And then we also ask you to submit a budget and a few other pieces of information. But if you sit down for 2 hours, you should be able to complete this
Nice.
and
Yeah.
submit it.
I love it. I love it that you're doing the due diligence behind Web3, because that's actually like a big problem with the vetting system here, right? Especially when it comes to like everybody thinking that they're doing something like sustainable or ecological, right? But anyways, like I love that you guys are solving these innovative solutions like for emerging markets, right? But like like let's pretend like you're talking to someone for the first time from Web2, and they're not interested in Web3 or whatever. Like, why should they care? How should they understand what Mercy Corp Ventures is doing? Maybe you could even like shed some light on some of those success stories that you've done right in the past, right? Because we see now that like blockchain and Bitcoin is starting to become like mainstream adopted, right? And the narrative is changing, right? So how is the narrative helping you guys, or what have you learned along the way for that?
Yeah. Thanks so much for those questions, Nick. So I would say, I guess, a little more context about Mastercard Ventures for those who might be hearing about us for the first time. So we are thesis-focused impact investors, and our thesis is centered around improving the climate and financial resilience of people in emerging markets. And this thesis is a reflection of the time we're living in today. We're living in a time of dramatic advancements in technology and connectivity. And at the same time, climate change is also a driver of a lot of the transformation we're seeing, and it presents both threats and opportunities. And so this is sort of how we arrived at our thesis, which is all about identifying innovative models that can strengthen the resilience of individuals and communities in frontier markets. And to date, we've supported over 50 early stage startups that have gone on to raise upwards of $500 million in follow-on funding.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I guess tying this back to blockchain, if someone is building in Web2, I think the reason why we think blockchain is an interesting piece of technology is basically because of the properties of blockchains and what they enable, the kind of unique solutions that those properties enable. So I think the properties that I would highlight is one, blockchain is an immutable database. That means whatever is saved there can be trusted by anyone. And then two, many blockchains allow for people to build self-executing pieces of code or logic, which are usually referred to as smart contracts. And then the third piece is around the fact that the blockchain is permissionless and it's available 24/7. So we think that these three properties allow for the development of really interesting solutions, especially for those that are targeting emerging markets. I guess I could highlight a few examples from our portfolio.
Please.
So one we've seen is around lowering the costs of transactions, and this leads to improving financial inclusion. We have a portfolio company called Bitmama from Nigeria that is basically using the blockchain to power cheaper cross-border payments using stablecoins. And then we've also seen that the use of smart contracts increases the efficiency of money movement, and this results in reduced settlement times and also lower transaction fees. And one example I'll highlight here is a pilot that we run with an organization called Diva Protocol that basically provides anticipatory cash transfers to drought-affected pastoralists at the time that they need it most. And this is powered by smart contracts. Happy to dive deeper into these examples. I think one last example I'll highlight is, the fact that you're able to have this immutable database as well as self-executing code. You're then able to design programmable incentives. So you can coordinate people using the blockchain. And one good example we've seen is with a startup called Atlantis DAO out of India that are leveraging token incentives to create a peer-to-peer network for clean water access in India. So I guess, that's sort of how I would approach a discussion with someone that is sort of more focused on Web2 development.
Yeah. Yo, I love it. And before I jump into like what most people think blockchain is, right, where they think of like crypto bros, trading apps, They're
Yeah.
not thinking about like sustainability, clean water, financial inclusion, or climate change, right?
Yeah.
And you're flipping that story on its head, which is cool, right? But I want to go back into like DevCon a little bit, because like that was like a real thing that you had to come over, and being a part of the Ethereum Foundation and the DevCon 7 has to be like a nice feather in the cap for Mercy Corp, because you can't have a better backer than something like ETH, which is pretty decentralized, right? And again, they're in for the greater good. They're not here to like make short-term gains. Walk me through a little bit about like how you felt. What was it like being on stage? The whole trip, man, back and forth. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I know it's separate from what you're doing, but it's also a big part of what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. DevCon was a fantastic opportunity. It's probably the largest conference I've personally attended. Over 12,000 attendees. And, the opportunity to speak on stage was really a fantastic opportunity. Obviously at the beginning, it can be a little intimidating, seeing all the lights and just how big the stage is.
Sure.
But I would say, for me personally, it was a fantastic trip. Bangkok is a really fun city. Enjoyed trying out, a lot of the food, but also it was a great place to connect with entrepreneurs and builders in the Web3 space, because, at the end of the day, we are we support entrepreneurs. And so we are our role is in the background. At the end of the day, all the examples that I'm highlighting are actually built by, builders, developers, entrepreneurs that are actually, building these solutions. We support them to scale the impact of their solutions. But, for me, it was a fantastic opportunity to connect with people that are actually on the front lines and actually building this tech.
Yeah, that's what I liked about it. So many developers in one spot, so much talent under one roof. But I mean, what? All right. So then, like, give me a little sneak peek, or walk me through, like, when you were here and you were speaking, were you also here, also looking for people that are like other projects that are inspiring you, making you say like, right, like this is how we pick them, or what are you doing? Or are you looking to bet on other projects that you meet and see at DevCon? Are you already going in with your own roadmap? Does meeting people like at a conference with 12,000 people influence that? Like, tell me a little bit about how the Crypto for Good Fund explores, like, the assimilation of DevCon, and not only that, but like you're navigating challenges, you're navigating time. Everybody's there, everyone's trying to like prove like what this fund is about, how you're separating it from not a hype project or just another thing. I don't know. Does that make sense? Like walk me through a little bit about how that includes for you.
I hope I got the question correct. So I would say, our approach with the Crypto for Good Fund is twofold. So on the one hand, we're always on the lookout to just understand, what's the bleeding edge, what's the cutting edge in the Web3 space. What are the new use cases? What are the new opportunities that are emerging? But on the other hand, we're also, driven by entrepreneurs. So, we, like I mentioned, we have an open call for proposals. And so, many times we read proposals, and these are and entrepreneurs are pitching us ideas that we haven't thought of ourselves. And so I would say, in terms of DevCon, it was, it's sort of twofold, right? So on the one hand, attending all the different sessions on DevCon, one, you sort of get an understanding of where the Ethereum ecosystem is at, what are the new capabilities that are sort of being enabled on the technical level, and also getting to see, what is taking off in developed markets, how can that be translated to frontier markets. But at the same time, like I mentioned, connecting with entrepreneurs and builders sort of opens your eyes and opens your mind just to understand the different possibilities that of tools and solutions that can be built on the blockchain. So I would say, in terms of our approach, it's twofold.
Yeah, I'm here. I just got disconnected for a minute, man. Listening. Twofold, yeah.
Yeah, yes. So sorry for
Yeah.
about that. Yeah, like I mentioned, our approach is both us sort of trying to understand what's happening in the market, and
Right.
I would call that a push approach. But at the same time, we have a pull approach where we rely on entrepreneurs to sort of propose interesting, innovative solutions that can be built using Web3, and that sort of piques our interest, and then
Mm.
we love to then go deeper. But on
Yeah.
the other hand, we're also constantly on the lookout for what's happening. What are the new capabilities that are being
Mm.
enabled on the blockchain, and that kind of thing.
What does pique your interest? What are some of those things that you're on the lookout for? What are the narratives or next
Yeah.
hype that you're kind of watching out for your domain?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, I think I'd probably put them in two buckets. I think one
Mm.
is around user experience. So I think over the past couple of months, we've seen a shift towards, building Web3 enabled solutions that are actually user friendly. So in the
Yeah.
past, we had issues around losing your seed phrase, people that think about a smallholder farmer. Some of these modalities were just difficult, made Web3 onboarding really difficult
Right.
for users. But over the past couple of months, we've seen a number of interesting solutions like account abstraction, the use of passkeys, and these have sort of simplified Web3 onboarding, especially in emerging markets. So you can sort of have a tap solution where someone can easily set up their wallet, and this drastically makes it broadens the number of people that can be addressed by such solutions. So I'd say one bucket is around just tools that are enabling a simpler user experience.
Yeah.
I think the second bucket would be around humanitarian aid delivery. We work a lot of our
Mm.
work, especially with the non-profit,
Sure.
involves delivery of humanitarian aid.
Right.
But I think the statistics say that about 99% of humanitarian aid that's delivered today is sort of delivered reactively. It's delivered after disaster happens. But what we're seeing more recently, using the power of smart contracts, it's possible to design solutions that can be anticipatory in nature,
Mm.
where
Mm.
you can deliver aid before disaster happens. So think about something like an earthquake or a flood or a drought. These are events that are somewhat predictable. And so, if you are a humanitarian organization that is looking to support, for instance, pastoralists that are affected by drought in a certain region, you do not have to sort of wait, for that to happen. Using predictive models, you can sort of bring that on chain and execute that via smart contracts. I think
Yeah.
that's one example that we've seen, that sort of highlights the power and potential of blockchains. I think
Yeah.
the other bucket that I would quickly highlight is DePIN,
Mm.
which is decentralized physical infrastructure networks.
Yeah.
Um, just the ability to finance hardware, especially, which tends to be expensive, and sort of providing models that can allow profit-seeking
Mm.
entrepreneurs to
Sure.
provide very much needed hardware
Oh
in
yes.
certain areas of the world,
Yeah.
powered by token incentives using a DePIN model. We think that's another area that we're pretty excited about.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I have a great DPN team to introduce you to named Paulu, and they may be listening today.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think if you're talking about crypto for good fund, and Mercy Ventures, what you guys are doing, they've done work in Brunei, Thailand, Angola. they are revolutionizing how we connect, right? And I think when you look at how technology is meeting the needs of the consumer right now, in terms to get online and understand more information about how we connect, how to audit and reflect and assess our own connections, we're actually like with Web3, with these emerging technologies, these emerging markets, we're actually giving a lot of autonomy and power and information back into the people. With that comes a lot of projects and education and opportunities to onboard the next 100,000 or 1 million, 2 million users, right? You can't do that if you don't have infrastructure that's ready for it. And I think Depend solves that problem. Decentralizing infrastructure, it sounds amazing in terms of how we connect, how we interact, how we share. And I think it just comes down to, whether or not the community is ready, and then what are we doing on that side, the advocates of Depend, what are we doing on that side that are not priming and prepping the community to be ready for that? Because it's a win-win for everyone, whether you're in the telecom industry, whether you're a user, a gamer, a streamer, a backpacker, a provider, right? Or someone running a node or running an app. And I think Depend really liberates that. They liberate that opportunity to monetize something that we could make better use of, which is connectivity.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
But what I would love to do is like get some questions from everyone who's watching. Shout out to Museigen again for hosting this. This is again Web3 Weekly every Thursday that we do something with Jonathan, Dex, and Rachel in the background making all the magic. If you're listening on Facebook Live or YouTube Live, drop me or Timo a question, because I believe the window for the app, the application is on the 20th. Is that correct? Like, in order to kind of sign up and be a part of this, is it closing soon?
Yes, absolutely. So the application closes on December 20th. And then, those who've applied can expect to hear back from us by the end of January with regards to whether they're moving forward or not in the process. We have up to $1 million in funding for Web3 builders. And like I mentioned, you can submit a proposal up to $100,000. We're going to fund up to $100,000 for each team that's successful.
Wow. Nice. Yeah. Nice. And I can't wait. After this commercial break, Dex is just queuing us off stage. After this, I want to dive deeper into some of the other projects that you have gone through this stage with, and I want to dive into like the success criteria. So how other people out there listening, whether you're a founder or a guy with an idea or on a team, how do you get involved with this, and how do you try to make your idea and your pitch known? So let's go into the success criteria and learn a little bit more about the Crypto for Good Fund right after this.
Awesome.
welcome everybody back to another episode of Web3 Weekly. We are talking to Timo from Mercy Corp Ventures. We were just talking a little bit about success criteria and what it takes to actually use crypto for good. We earlier touched on some of the misconceptions, some of the shortcomings, some of the traditional stereotypes that blockchain has, how it's not necessarily known for good. And we have Timo here that I can't wait to bring back to the stage to kind of unravel those misconceptions and then really dive deeper into like the future of where he sees like blockchain and Mercy Corp Ventures shaping emerging markets. But first, like, let's go back to talking about what it takes to be a part of your application that is closing soon. And Timo, please dive back into the success criteria.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks so much, Nick, once again for having me on here. In terms of the selection criteria, there's 5 selection criteria that we have, and I'll just quickly go over those. So one is impact, and here we're looking to understand, what's the intended outcome of the pilot, how important is this outcome to the stakeholders, who is this pilot serving, and how much, how many people will this pilot reach if it's successful. The second piece is around what we call innovativeness. And here we're looking to understand, how is this solution transformative? If this solution is successful, to what extent can it be scaled more broadly?
Sure.
And then we usually use a term, the term first of a kind. So we're looking to find solutions that are unique and innovative in some way. It could be that the tech is novel. It could be that it's the first time that this tech is being launched in a specific market. That's one of the ways that we assess innovativeness. The third piece is around sustainability. And here, we're basically looking to understand the business model of the solution. Even though the solution is pre-revenue, we want to understand, can this solution works out, can it be self-sustainable? I do mention that we do accept applications from nonprofits, but
Nice.
even for nonprofits, we're keen to understand, is there a mechanism for this work to be carried forward beyond the duration of the pilot? And then the fourth piece of criteria is around what we call traction. And with traction, this depends if your solution is post-launch or pre-launch. If it's pre-launch, then obviously you don't really have any metrics. And so we're looking to understand, the team behind the solution. What have you guys done before? What successes have you had before launching whatever you're doing? And then if you've already launched, then we'll be keen to understand, what do you have any metrics that show the usage of the platform? If it's a fintech solution, it could be something like transaction volume. It could be number of active users. So these metrics will vary depending on the team. But we're basically keen to understand the level of traction of the solution. And then finally, the last piece is around what we call thesis alignment. Like I had mentioned before, our thesis is centered around improving the climate and financial resilience of people in emerging markets. And so, we're always looking to see solutions that focus around financial inclusion and climate resilience.
Dude, there's another good project. Yeah, I have like so many ideas right now. Like, I think like that is something else that we need to talk about. Like, if I'm not necessarily ready to sign up for the app just yet, or to be a part of your thing that closes very soon, right? Great opportunity for startups, for those who are already making an impact. Again, Qualu, actually, a lot of founders of a lot come to mind. But let's say I just want to be a part of this because I like it. I can help wherever I am. I'm in Bangkok, right? How do we join your community? How do we join your social without necessarily going all the way and having to like, is there partnerships? Is there community opportunities? Is there a network or a Telegram, someplace I can send our listeners out there? Because I do think that like what you're doing is really revolutionary for blockchain. You're actually scrubbing the name blockchain and crypto, and you are highlighting its good use case, and you're doing that in emerging markets, which are often overlooked, which is important for depend, important for decentralization. But ultimately, like, it takes a village, right, man? Like, so how do we find you on your socials so that those of us who aren't maybe prepared to go all the way can stay in touch and contribute to the mission?
Yeah, absolutely. There's three main ways to follow us. One is via LinkedIn, and then two is via Twitter, and then three is via our newsletter. I think I will post the links in the chat.
Dex, pull it up if you could, man. That'd be great. We have a question in the chat while you're doing that. While you post those links, it may actually be the same to answer the question that we have here, because Gian asked, like, can you please let us know how to find more, or post a link, share the app? Like, how do we get involved with Mercy Corps?
Yeah, good question. I just posted a link to our LinkedIn.
Nice, Dex. Pull that up if you could. Because I think really that's the beautiful part about Web3. My favorite part of DevCon, and I didn't get to see you speak. What day did you speak, by the way, in DevCon?
It was on Friday morning.
Right.
Yeah.
I was there, like, I was volunteering on a Sunday, and then I went back every evening for a little bit. So I missed you. I really enjoyed what they did, because I met so many cool people. Like, I was helping out with the bracelets, right? And you just met so many talented builders that were just like using their, like just using their card as like, oh, here's my LinkedIn, here's my NFC chip, here's my DevCon bracelet from last year. It was really cool to see, man. And I'm happy that like all of this brought everyone together, because we probably wouldn't have been able to scale something like this if we didn't know about, like, you making an impact at DevCon. So again, having LinkedIn's, having these opportunities to bring people into your network, whether it's on Twitter or whatever, well, like, that would be great. So how else can we find you?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's really great to be connected with you.
So Mercy Corps Ventures, yeah, and then LinkedIn as well, and then again, after your window closes, what's your next steps? What are your challenges, or what are your next, like, plans for your team, your portfolio, right, for the next year? Because once your opportunity closes of looking at, like, some of these other projects that are doing things for good, where do you go next, and how do you navigate through those hard conversations while you're going through bull market or bear market, right, and continuing to tap into emerging markets?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I guess, after the application closes, obviously we go through a process of reviewing the applications and getting back to those that are successful. I guess I would also highlight that, beyond just the funding, we also provide mentorship and network opportunities for the people, the teams that we work with. So as part of this program, you get access to our network of Web3 experts, impact investors, and entrepreneurs, as well as introduction to our wider ecosystem of investors and accelerators. And then another piece that we offer support with is around impact measurement. So we have a lot of experience around impact metrics and frameworks, and these are aligned with global standards. And so many entrepreneurs that that are struggling to sort of tell the story of how their blockchain solution is creating impact in the world, this is the kind of thing that we can provide support with.
I love that. I love that because like Oscar in the chat just asked a very timely question. He said, "Do you have X Spaces sessions lined up or any webinars?" Because if you are going to highlight those type of people who are making that good, you should provide them like a space or make a ritual or habit to do that, so that our listeners and everyone can tune in, maybe even participate. Right? I think that would be a really cool idea. But yeah, what do you think about Oscar's question?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we do host spaces and webinars from time to time. We actually just recently hosted a webinar that was centered around providing application tips and guidance for people that are looking to apply for the Crypto for Good Fund.
Nice.
But beyond that, like I mentioned before, the goal of the Crypto for Good Fund is to close the hype gap in blockchain. And beyond just providing funding and support, we also we try to make an effort to share all the learnings and insights that come out of our pilots. So for each pilot that we run, we conduct an in-depth end-line impact assessment, and we usually host Twitter spaces to go over the learnings and findings for each of those pilots that come out of the Crypto for Good Fund. So I would say just look out on our Twitter account, our X account, sorry, and from time to time we do host Twitter spaces there.
Nice. Before we get to the next two questions, and thank you for everyone tuning in live and dropping your questions in the chat. Keep them coming. Timo and I love it. Before we get to the next two questions, right? You mentioned closing the hype gap. You're also talking about crypto for good. Clearly, somewhere along the line, man, there has to be some hard conversations that we're having. Like, tell me a little bit about like some of those hard conversations that you had to convince people. Because I'm doing crypto, right? But I'm not doing crypto for good, and I don't know if it's actually the same conversations. But you do feel ultimately that you have to convince someone to do something that's already better for people. But please walk me through some of those hard conversations that you may have had convincing this.
Yeah, that's a good question, Nick. So I'd say, personally, I've had many debates, with friends around whether blockchain is net good or net bad for the world. And obviously there's plenty of scams in the crypto space, and I do have friends that have fallen prey to these. And so it's a bit always hard to convince this crowd about any benefits of crypto. But I think the way I approach these conversations is to basically highlight the properties of blockchains that make them uniquely suited to solve certain problems. Like I had mentioned before, the fact that the blockchain is an immutable database, this makes it trustable by anyone. The ability to have self-executing code, and the fact that it's permissionless. I think this is sort of how I approach these conversations. And also within Museigen, we try to keep the users at the center of our work. I think it's called the human-centered approach. We put the end user at the heart of everything when designing our pilots. And that
design thinking.
That means we make some trade-offs that may not be ideal. So for instance, like I mentioned, in many emerging markets, it's always been a challenge. So for instance, many rural communities have low ownership rates of smartphones. So you find 20% of them have smartphones. And so, for people who are Web3 maxis, they might say, not your keys, not your keys, not your funds. We've had to make a few trade-offs in some instances where you have a wallet that is sort of receiving funds on behalf of other users, and so they still a human trust component, and so the flow of funds is not entirely happening end to end on the blockchain. but it's sort of like a step where you still have like human intervention in the loop. So I would say, in terms of like, to your question, I think those are some of the trade-offs that we've had to make, just around building solutions that are
Yeah,
human-centered.
for sure.
But I guess for the skeptics, my approach is just to highlight, these are the properties of blockchains, and because of these properties, that means blockchains result in lower transaction fees, increased efficiency of money movement, reduced settlement times, improved coordination amongst groups of people who might not necessarily even trust each other are able to
Sure.
coordinate.
No need
Yeah,
though.
yeah,
Yeah.
using Web3.
I think
I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah,
no, it
that's
does. It does. It does. And I love it because it has like a very good bird's eye view of what we're talking about, right? But I want to
yeah.
take like a smaller view, right? I want to answer Alan's question in the chat. Alan says, "What do you think will be crypto's market outlook next year?" And I want to look first from like a local perspective, right? Like the sentiment of your friends, the people in your network, before you go geopolitical on me or global on me, right? Because we all understand that like crypto sentiment is different from place to place. But what do you think, if you're answering Alan, the outlook for you personally, and then maybe even Mercy Corp Ventures next year?
Yeah, Nick. I think one of the unique aspects about our work in the Web3 space is that we're actually a bit removed from the market frenzy, and so market predictions, that type of thing is not something I can really help with.
That's
Um,
good though. You're sitting outside that because you're adding value, no matter if it's a bull market or a bear market or whatever, right? And that's what I'm hearing. Is that
Exactly. Yes. So we're definitely removed from that side of Web3, and so I honestly wouldn't know. I can't provide a useful prediction in terms of where the market is going.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and that means we probably
Yeah,
can't
but
answer
maybe
Lois' question either about do we
maybe
see Bitcoin 250K in 2025. We can't answer that either. Sorry.
Yeah,
Like,
I think
we
the
just
only
can't.
thing I'll add is that whenever there's like a bull market, we tend to see more people interested in the Web3 space,
Right.
and that means we have more builders in the ecosystem.
Yeah,
Um,
100%.
yeah, so I think from our perspective, that's one of the benefits of the bull markets. We tend to see more people interested in building solutions and launching
Yeah,
solutions.
that was the
But
coolest thing about DevCon, to be honest. Like to see so many builders, to see the hacker cave, the Serenity Room, like all the little rooms they had upstairs, all the stages. Like it was a really nice environment, and it was a lot of talent, a lot of developers under one roof, and I liked it a lot, man. Not to mention the side events. Did you get a chance to go to any side events while you were there?
Yes, I went to the web. There was a side event called Web of Roots,
Hmm?
which was sort of focused on people that are building impactful solutions on the blockchain. And that was really great, connecting with different people from across the world.
Yeah, nice. We have another question from Oscar. Thanks again, Oscar. Oscar says, when do you think blockchain can be used by local governments for voting purposes? And that's a tough question. There's a lot of layers there, right? You can talk about DAOs, you can talk about governance, you can talk about decentralization, democracy, but it's going to take a small one. In my opinion, just to front run the question, Timo. It's going to take a country like Costa Rica or someone without military, right? Like a small, really prototype country to do it, because it's a big risk, right? Once you do that, you're doing everything that Timo talked about, which is like making things transparent, putting it on an immutable ledger, creating accountability, transparency, preservation, and I think immutability. I think that kind of stuff is great for governance, but I don't know who's going to be the first domino to fall. Maybe you do, Timo. Like, what do you think on that? Like, you have any alpha or intel on governments that are already looking into some of this kind of stuff?
Yeah, no, I don't have any intel on this, but I think that there also, you rightly mentioned the risks involved in this. I think there's still several risks that sort of have to be mitigated before
Yeah.
this can be practical. I think one is just around access. It's not obvious that everyone has an access to a wallet and know how to actually use it. But I think there's also a risk around social engineering. We've seen issues where people are locked out of their email accounts because of phishing attacks. Some people are even having their wallets drained, and these are sophisticated people. And so I think, in my opinion, I think that is probably the largest hurdle that needs to be climbed.
Agreed.
How do you preserve the integrity of the election if you know that the average user is not going to be a sophisticated tech person, and how do you protect them from manipulation in a world where they can just click a link and someone will vote on their behalf?
Lose everything. Timo,
Yeah.
I would love to have you on because that's what I love about Museigen. Museigen is all about Web3 EDU, Web3 education. Even tonight, like what we pulled off, and we've only met each other. Like full disclosure, everybody, we only met each other on Monday. And shout out to Timo for being cool to just jump on the show. Like, let's continue the chat because I felt like it needed to be amplified, needed to be heard by a lot of people. What they're doing is so cool. And it is changing the narrative of what we're dealing with in terms of blockchain and Web3. It's not a resistance, it's an evolution, and appreciate it. And again, very, very happy to hear like how people can get involved. What is another way, like just like for others who are listening for the first time tonight? I was a volunteer at DevCon. You were at DevCon. We kind of connected through the DevCon connection. But do you have volunteers in your program? Does Mercy have another way for people to support today or get involved in the kind of work that you're doing?
Like I mentioned, the easiest way to get involved in what we're doing is to sign up for our newsletter, which will have all the information with regards to any events, any call for applications that we have. I posted a link to that in the chat, so it would be good. It would be good if you could share that. I think it's the last link in the chat. And then, if you are a Web3 builder or entrepreneur that is building a blockchain-based solution, yes, that's our newsletter. If you're building a solution in emerging markets, we'd like to hear from you. We currently have our call for applications for the Crypto for Good Fund open, and we're accepting applications until the 20th of December. And so, I would encourage anyone that, I guess what I didn't mention is that we fund startups at all stages, whether you're early stage, whether you have no product yet, whether you're just whether you already have users, we're looking to hear from you. So feel free to submit your application.
Nice. I love it. I love what you're doing. I mean, it's inspiring work. And again, if anyone's out there, even if you don't tune into the live one, you catch this recording, reach out, go to the socials, check out the articles. The newsletter, it comes out weekly. How's that work? It goes straight to your inbox. How do we find the newsletter?
Yeah, the newsletter comes out monthly. Yeah, it's a monthly.
Right.
Yeah.
And where we see you next, or where can we find you next? What's next for Mercy then?
So I guess we're pretty busy, for the next 6 to 8 months. We'll really be focused on the Crypto for Good Fund 4. But if people are building around climate tech, we'll actually have another call for proposals coming around that. That doesn't have to be blockchain based. So, for those that are Web2 builders, that's probably something to look out for. And I guess, that's sort of what we have in the works.
Oh, it's exciting stuff, man. And I look forward to hearing about when do you when do you accept those who are applying, right? Like, do you have like a
Yes.
6 month, 3 month, 1 month window? Like, when will we hear that kind of news break?
Yeah, so that typically takes 2 to 3 months.
Okay.
Yeah, typically takes 2 to 3 months. So by the end of February, you should hear back from us in terms of whether we want to move forward or not in the process.
Nice, nice. I'm very excited to follow along with you guys. I'm so happy we connected when we did. DevCon kind of does that. It brings people together from all over. And that was the beautiful part about it. I'm so grateful that you made some time tonight. I'm so grateful that you're able to kind of continue to share the mission that you brought over to Bangkok originally, and educate people. Thank you to the Museigen listeners, Jonathan, Dex, Rachel, everyone in the background, Alan, Oscar, everyone who asked questions. Yeah, we can't predict the market, right? But we can predict who's doing crypto for good. And that to me is what it's about. That's what Web3 Weekly, Web3 EDU is about. And Timo, again, I hope we can do this again. I hope that maybe there's an opportunity for Museigen or myself to be on one of your spaces or learn more about how our community can find out about webinars and ways to take action, ways to get involved, or even volunteer in something like this, because I feel like more and more people are waking up to the fact that Web3 is a movement. It's not a trend, it's not hype, it's not a scam. There are elements of all of that, but this movement requires a collective efficacy. And I think what you have in the ethos that you guys bring is a great thing to rally behind. So very, very much appreciative of the time, man. Thanks.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me, Nick. Hopefully we can connect another time when I'm in Bangkok, or if you're ever in East Africa.
Yeah, let's go. Right. I mean, Jonathan, again, Dex, everyone, if we could later on post the links to the application and again to the Mercy Corps Ventures website, that would be great, because I do think this is something worth sharing. Again, this is transcending meme coins, transcending hype, transcending chains. What we're talking about is actually using blockchain to make a difference in emerging markets, and that to me is the real essence of decentralization. So guys, that's it for another episode of Web3 Weekly. If you have any other questions that you didn't get in during the live chat, and we're sorry if we didn't get to all of them, hit us up later on. We'll be happy to help you out. Thank you, Timo. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, Dex, Rachel. That's all for now. Good night.